this or listening to it, probate really is the county, right? The county runs the probate court, correct? So it's really
Correct.
the county and the court system that's making decisions about how your affairs are settled after you pass versus a living trust gives specific instructions in terms of what you want done.
Well, I understand the process, so I
Yeah.
can, I can explain to them some of the pitfalls, some of the stuff they can expect. Like for instance, with this last client of mine, there was some stuff going on with her attorney, and you know, she would ask me like, "Hey, she said this, that," and some of the things I would say, God, I haven't encountered.
Want them to do. And so there's a pressure on them and a stress on them, besides the fact that they're mourning the loss, right? They're also in a place emotionally where they're trying to do right by whoever it was that left these assets to them. Talk about that for a second, because that's the real estate thing is easy for us. That there's something past this, right? Selling their house is not the end of the deal, right? It's just kind of the beginning of a new chapter. So
Right.
I can imagine with your legal background, that helps quite a bit when you're dealing with these different types of legal issues with. Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Frank Macri, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And I love the fact that you were at that demo the other day that we did at California Coast Escrow. So, like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about the things you're doing in real estate, specifically regarding probate and divorce and bankruptcy and that type of thing.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on the program, Mike.
Thanks for being here, bud. This is really cool. So, where were you born?
I was born in Niagara Falls, New York.
Wow. Did you grow up there?
Pardon me?
Did you grow up there?
That's where I grew up, yes.
What an amazing sight that is. Those falls are just incredible.
You like a lot of things, you take it for granted when like it's just always been there.
Yeah.
But now I've been in the San Diego area now. I moved out here in 1979. So I've been here for a long time. And, the times when I would I'll go back home, especially in earlier years where I had friends who would go back home with me who'd never been there. Because, we'll show you the falls, but it hits you different, when you see it again, because it is really kind of awe-inspiring.
Yeah, it really is. Just incredible. One of the great wonders of the world, right?
Yeah.
So did you grow up your entire childhood in Niagara Falls, or did you move out here? You said 79. So how old were you when you moved out here?
I was in college.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So your whole childhood was in Niagara Falls.
Yes.
So what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
Just especially looking back on it, it was really a sense of community, and I'm Italian. That part of it, you just had close friends, and our parents were also born and raised there. So your friends that you became friends with, chances are really high that our parents were also friends.
Right.
So a real family type of atmosphere. Of course, about, being 20 miles north of Buffalo. You know all about the snow and stuff like that. So, you know, exceptional summertime, you know, by Niagara Falls, the Niagara River, Lake Ontario. And actually, the house that I grew up in, literally, I could walk into Canada. I was that close.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
But man, those are some tough winters.
Well, but that's all you know at the time.
When you walk out and the snow's higher than you are, you know. Yeah, it's
Oh,
yeah, it's really really something. Makes me cold just thinking about it. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
oh, without a doubt, my father.
Yeah. Why is that?
Um, you know, kind of emotional for me because yesterday was the anniversary of his death.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
So, 12 years he's been gone now. But my dad was a lawyer.
Mhm.
You know, my grandparents, you know, didn't have much. He had, you know, there were 6 kids. Um, you know, he did everything by his own bootstraps. But he's just was just such a kind, wise person who always put others first.
Yeah,
And, you know, I, I'd like to think that I have some of that, but, you know, he's my hero.
yeah.
Sorry.
Sound like he was a great role model.
Oh, yeah.
Did he
Everyone,
have his own firm?
yes, he had his own practice, but he also was in with other attorneys. And, you know,
What sort of law did he practice?
well, you know, which I think is more common back then than now. Everything's more specialized.
Yeah,
He was a general practitioner. He did it
gotcha.
all. Did
Gotcha.
criminal he did criminal defense. Actually, he also as part of his practice, he was an assistant public defender at some point.
Oh, wow.
Um, but you know, back in New York, you have attorneys for property transfers. So he did that. He did, the divorces. He did, you know, setting up people in the estate planning. Um, he really did it all.
Yeah. So Niagara was kind of a smaller community, right?
Well, you know, it's smaller now than it was. It was probably like around 100,000 people when I was
Oh,
growing
wow.
up.
That's pretty good size. Why is it smaller
Yeah.
now?
You know, the economy, jobs, not that great back there because I think the population is like maybe 40, 45,000 these days.
Wow,
So
that's
talking
quite a
about
difference.
half. Yeah.
That's quite a difference. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. Okay, so in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Yeah, I loved history.
Yeah.
And I loved, especially I loved the inventors. At one point, I would say, as I recall, I was probably an expert regarding Thomas Edison's life.
Yeah.
I just knew everything. I remember one time we were going to be having a test or a quiz the next day, and it was on the inventors and a lot with Thomas Edison. And for some reason, there was one book short for someone to take home and study. And I said, "Here, you can take my book. I don't need it. I'll ace this thing." And I
Wow.
recall I got 100 on the test.
That's cool, man. Good for you. Did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
um, yeah, there was a couple for different reasons. Um, I know that like you know, math type subjects don't really float my boat. But you know, in high school when we took geometry,
Hmm.
um, the teacher was Miss Hannah,
Hmm.
and she made you afraid to not learn this. But she was an excellent teacher. I mean, no one really failed her class because she wouldn't allow it, and you were afraid
Yeah.
to not pass that. But yeah, and I had another one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Wellington. Uh, he he taught trig.
Hmm.
I don't know how I passed. I think he just wanted to make sure I got the hell out of there. But but he was a great guy. Um, but
I want to make sure you moved on,
right.
huh? I had that sort of thing happen a lot where They didn't want to see me again. Right? It's like, I don't know what that's about, right? They would say something along the lines of, well, he's a lot, right? Yeah.
Well,
It's hard to imagine. Did you
but
play sports in high school?
oh yeah, yeah.
Did you have a
Uh,
favorite sport?
Hockey
Yeah.
and football. Yeah, in high school growing up, I played hockey, football, basketball, ran some track and field, um, but uh, hockey and football were my favorite,
What
and
position did you play in
basketball
football?
at the time. I'm sorry.
What position did you play in football?
I was wide receiver.
Were you?
I actually could run pretty fast back then.
That's cool. Got some wheels, huh? That's cool.
I did.
What about hockey? What was your position in hockey?
I was a forward. I was a winger. Yeah, hockey is definitely my favorite. By a tad to football, but yeah, that was my game for sure.
What is it about hockey that makes it your game?
Um, well, everything that it took for me to be able to play hockey, because I didn't start ice skating till I was older,
Yeah.
and I remember wanted to learn to skate so I could play hockey,
Hmm.
and I would go to the public skating at the ice rink, and I remember those times where I would skate around, but then I would go off by myself near a corner or something, and I would just get probably about like 10 feet away and just skate into the boards to learn how to stop with my skates like the pro hockey players did.
Hmm.
I mean, so I remember crashing into the board so many times. That's how I stopped.
Yeah.
But
So the board stopped you,
yes,
not the skates.
yeah. Eventually, eventually it got eventually got to the point where I could skate without even thinking about it. It was it
Gotcha.
was good. So that's how I got my start. But I don't know. I just love the game. My mother's originally from Canada. My dad met her across the border.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a pro NHL team in Buffalo,
Sure.
and then like I said, I could walk to Canada, so
Yeah.
had a lot of hockey influence.
A
Um,
lot. Just so we're
yeah,
clear, a lot, right?
yeah.
So
So
you graduate high school. Where do you go from there?
then went to college. I went to a small private college about 3 hours away in Elmira, New York, actually very close to Ithaca, New York, which is where
Okay.
Cornell is and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to Elmira College for a couple of years, but I had some very good friends, especially my best friend since fourth grade, that right out of high school, he had come out to San Diego. And he had an older brother who had been in the Marines, and he was out here. But so I came out and visited and all that, and it was like, oh man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. And they had at my school where I was at Elmira College, they promoted this big on this small campus, but the junior year abroad, away, um, go to South America, Europe, for school. But back in the day, they had handbook stuff. There was nothing online at that point.
Right. Right.
But in the student handbook, they had in the smaller print, they had a thing junior year of study away within the United States.
Hmm.
Go to another 4-year college or university within the U.S. for your junior year.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was like, well, let me check into that, and it came out, and ended up going to San Diego State with my best friend, another really good friend.
Hmm.
We had a 4-bedroom house with a pool,
Hmm.
and we ended up getting a fourth roommate. We just put like a post-it note on the bulletin board out at the campus. And so, I was out there for my junior year, and my thought was, well, if I don't like it, you know, I can just go back. So, but in the meantime, I mean, I'd be going to school again with my high school buddies.
Right.
So came out, and well, here it is, 2025. I'm still out here.
Never
So
left, huh?
no, well, you know what? I did go back for my
Senior.
senior year
Yeah.
because my actually I was thinking I wanted to transfer, but I also was planning to go to law school after that.
In New
So,
York or out here?
so wherever,
Oh,
but
gotcha.
to go to law school. So, but I found that if I went back, I just had to finish out that year.
Mhm.
But if I officially transferred to San Diego State, I would have 2 more years of undergraduate. And I'm thinking, well, then I'm going to have 3 years of law school.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot.
let me just go back, graduate, and then come back out. And
Gotcha.
that's what I did, and here I've been.
So you come back out here and you decide to go to law school. What makes you decide to go to law school? Obviously, your dad was a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Was that what inspired you to do it?
But yeah, that was definitely an influence for sure. So, and like my dad, to help people.
Yeah,
That was the goal of that.
gotcha. So you go to law school out here at a law school in San Diego, Thomas Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
And you graduate.
Hmm.
What was your favorite thing about going to law school out here?
Getting finished with law school.
Being done.
Yeah, it's a grind,
Yeah,
but I'm glad I did it. Um, but I still have some great friends
yeah,
from law school, so that was probably the best thing. But it's I'm glad I did it, but I would never want to do it again.
I got you.
You
I
know, it's
got
like it's like being chased by a steamroller.
you.
You don't want to trip and fall because you're going to get run over. So
Right.
um, it's much more intense than college life,
I got you.
but
So
definitely worthwhile.
what was the single most important thing you learned in law school?
Mm,
Don't stumble.
yeah, don't stumble.
Don't let the
Well,
steamroller roll over you.
well, probably is to really think,
Yeah,
because the curriculum is essentially all case studies,
yeah,
and how to look at a set of facts and be able from those facts make an argument on one side is how something should be, but then make an argument as well on the other side. So I guess to be objective and to really think.
yeah. What did you earn your bachelor's degree in?
Um, Political science with a minor in criminal justice.
So law school, I'm guessing, was a lot different than your undergrad.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it was law school was just all essentially all the courses that are geared towards the bar exam.
Right,
You had very few electives you could take.
right.
Where college, even whatever I had a political science
Hmm.
major. That was my degree. But as I recall from that curriculum, there were a lot of other, courses that I took as part of that whole education.
Gotcha. Yeah. So law school was more intense and more focused
Yeah,
and just a different way of learning, it sounds like, kind of more critical thinking than anything.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. So you graduate from Thomas Jefferson Law. Where do you go from there?
Well, I kind of got a little disenchanted with being a lawyer. Um,
Why?
well, you know what? I guess, growing up in a smaller place
Hmm.
than San Diego,
Hmm.
and I always compared everything to the way I saw my dad do his
Yeah.
practice. For instance, I mean, a lot of people remember this. My dad had his clients, these Italian immigrants,
Mhm.
and I don't recall, or I don't think I ever really knew, but he had to do some legal work for them, and they really couldn't afford to pay him. But I mean, that's just how my dad was. They needed help, but they owned a pizzeria and they made really good pizza. So he took his fee in pizzas. So I mean, whenever there was a party or anything else. I mean,
He had the hookup.
it seemed like we got free pizza for like years. That was that was the benefit of everyone in our family, a lot of our good close friends. Um,
That was
so
quite a legal bill.
yeah, yeah. Well, maybe not, but everything went a lot farther back then too.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just like I don't want to like this, but almost like Mayberry.
Hmm.
You know, it was, let's just say, as I saw how my dad did his practice and how he related with people, it was that where here in a big metropolitan area like San Diego, it's just
Culture shock.
it's not that homespun
Yeah.
type of thing,
Yeah.
and it seemed like it was more specialized.
Little more of a stark awakening, right?
Yeah.
When you realize sort of the difference between one versus the other. The reason I'm asking is I have a number of people that I've interviewed over the years that have gone to law school in San Diego, and they have experience with their parents being lawyers, that kind of thing, in other parts of the country, and it's just not the same, right? And some of them, while they were in law school, were interning at local law firms in San Diego, and they just were blown away at how different everything was and how everything was more cut and dried and more money focused and that kind of thing
Hmm.
than being a important member of the community, right? Of being sort of a pillar of the community,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, there is some of that happens here too. It's just this is a different economy. This is a different way of life here, including real estate, right? Real estate back there is different than it is here. It
Oh
just
yeah.
is, right? Because the whole thing is different. So, so you graduate from law school. You're a little disenchanted with the legal profession kind of thing. So you're not necessarily that motivated to get into law full time. What do you end up doing after law school?
Well, I was thinking about what am I going to do? And this goes back again to my best friend since fourth grade who was out here. Um, he, real entrepreneurial type of guy to this day, he's the same way. But at that point, he had gotten into mortgage loans,
Hmm.
and he had moved from San Diego. He was now up in Orange County, but we were very tight, always in touch and getting together. And so it's like, well, maybe I think about real estate. It's like, I got my law degree and I know real property law, I know contract law.
Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. Mm-hmm.
A lot of those things that are all tied together. It's like
Yeah.
that could work out.
Yeah.
So I went and took a course to get my real estate license, and then I started with that, and I got my license in November of 1985,
Okay.
and here I've been
Ever
ever.
since? So
Yeah.
you've been in real estate this whole time?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. I started in 92 and I've got people going, listen, we should have put you out to pasture a long time ago. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But that's really cool, man. So so when you started in real estate, what was the one thing that you learned that was sort of not what you thought it was going to be? Like what was the number one
Oh,
surprise when you got into real estate?
number one surprise. I, coming from, from law school
Mhm.
and how that all goes very regimented. And, you know, the thing when I started, I just thought, the the other agents in my office. And back in those days, as you recall, people were in the office and people worked out of the office. This is a newer phenomena where everyone just it's remote. But I just thought, my first thought, and I remember this vividly, is like, wow, these people are so unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Versus the
just
law
thought,
school crowd that you were hanging out with, right? You're talking about
right,
people that really kind of lack professionalism. Not all of them. There are some
no,
that are pretty amazing, but
it just,
there's a good portion of the agent population, good, bad, or indifferent, right? That you
right.
sort of look at them and go, wow, really?
Yeah, and not about anyone in particular. It was just seemed like in general the way it worked. It
Yeah.
was like this just seems so unprofessional.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been brought up in a lawyer household, and then I've just come from these 3 years of indoctrination
Right.
out of law school, and then on top of that, I'm thinking like, you know, this, for me to get my real estate license, I said, well, the good news, almost more than half of the stuff on the test was legal stuff.
Yeah.
So that was like easy for me. But I mean, that's all you had to do is just sign up, and at that time, just sign up. I want to get my license, take a course,
One class, real estate
take,
principles.
yeah, take the test and pass it. So, and I thought like, there's this is it should be tougher to get into this.
Yeah.
I felt like I got a hall pass because I put 3 years of law school in.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, that's the one thing that really sticks out from in the very beginning.
You were definitely prepared, that's for sure, from the law school part of it, right? So you get into real estate. What was your experience your first year?
I was like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not I'm not a typical salesperson.
Right.
Um, I wanted to, hopefully my law background would be a benefit. Um, but uh, I also saw how that people consider realtors like a used car salesman too. And and as we know, being in this business, there's a lot more to it.
Mhm.
But I think as times have moved on, um, I think the general public sees that there is a benefit and to know someone that really knows what they're doing to guide you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So you, in your real estate business, you sort of move towards the legal side of the business, which makes perfect sense considering your background, right? So you started working in probate, you started working in divorce, you started working in bankruptcy, that kind of thing. Talk about probate for a second. You're you're actually working when you work with a probate property. Talk about, for people that don't know, talk about what that means.
Well, as you know, when you go into probate, it's because someone has passed away, and then
Without
there's,
a will.
well, or with a will.
Okay.
You have to have, if you want to avoid probate, make sure you have a living trust.
Okay.
But
Hold on for a second. Talk about that for a second. Why is a living trust so important? Because most people think that you go into probate because you don't have a will, right?
yeah, but that's not accurate.
And if you have a will, you can still end up going to probate because people can challenge the will, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you want to avoid probate, you need to have your estate in a living trust.
Okay. Why is
So
that?
uh, that's that's just the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but talk about why a living trust is something that will help you avoid probate.
Well, I mean that's just kind of legally the way it works. And the thing with the living trust, it's also a private matter,
Yeah.
and with the trust, the usually generally the person that's died or whatever, if they have all their affairs in order within the trust, it just directs what's going to happen after their passing.
Right.
And
Specifically.
yes.
So we're going to do this with the house. We're going to do this with the cars. We're going to do this with the stocks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there can be a will within the trust.
But the trust has specific instructions, and that's part of what keeps it out of probate.
Yeah. That's just a legal vehicle that, avoids probate.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a will, or if you do have a will, if it's not in a trust, you're going to go to probate. So, in my part of it is when it comes to probates, that there's going to be an attorney who's going to handle the legal part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with me is I understand that process.
Mm-hmm.
So, attorneys like working with me, but my part of it is the real estate end of it, but it's evolved where it's almost like I'm a project manager for families because I see the same issues come up
right
over and over again that aren't really related to selling the house or not,
right
but just just issues of like what do we do? How do we get started?
mm-hmm.
This is what I need. Can you help me? So at this point, I've compiled a pretty big team of other professionals, vendors, whatever's needed. And so, like I said, I look at myself as kind of like when I'm in these type of situations, I'm like the project manager for everything but the legal stuff. Let the attorney handle the legal stuff, and I'll handle the real estate and the rest.
You're coordinating all the moving parts.
Right.
So real quick, for people that have never heard of this before or not sure what probate is, it's where actually you tell us. So what is probate?
It's a process where people go to have the estate of whoever died. It takes care of their affairs.
So it's a court
that
makes a decision on what's going to happen with the assets that are in that person's estate, correct?
Yes.
So instead of the trust where you have specific.
Well, if there's a will, then the will may dictate about where stuff's going to go. If there is no will, then there's a thing called intestate succession.
Right.
And then that you have to see kind of where you fall in the pecking order.
Right.
Is who's going to be in charge, who's going to inherit. Like, for instance, I just had my last one that closed. My client, her dad passed away. He wasn't married, so he had no wife, and he had no other children but her. So by intestate succession, she was the whole estate.
Right.
So that went into probate. It lasted a very, very long time. But, her thing, she had to get everything in order, with bank accounts and investment accounts. But, we had to wait like 5 or 6 months before she had her first hearing from the court where they would name her the administrator.
Gotcha. So for people that are watching this or listening to it, probate really is the county, right? The county runs the probate court, correct? So it's really the county and the court system that's making decisions about how your affairs are settled after you pass versus a living trust gives specific instructions in terms of what you want done. So your instructions, even though you're deceased, are carried out.
Yeah. And another big thing is like probate matters are public record.
Yeah.
You can go down to the courthouse and pull them up. Whereas with the living trust, it's private.
Right.
And just within the trust, that's how things are handled. There's no involvement with the court.
Right. Gotcha. So if somebody is in a situation where they have a probate, like somebody's passed away and they've got a property and the estate, it sounds like, is going into probate, that kind of thing. And if they were to work with you, what sets you apart? It sounds like your experience working the probate side, but also your legal background too, right?
hmm Yeah, well, I understand the process, so I
Yeah.
can, I can explain to them some of the pitfalls, some of the stuff they can expect. Like for instance, with this last client of mine, there was some stuff going on with her attorney, and you know, she would ask me, like, hey,
Hmm.
she said this, that, and, some of the things I would say, God, I haven't encountered that. And I've been doing this. He said, you may want to ask your attorney this or that. So, I mean, she leaned on me even for some of that stuff. But, I like to do what I call an estate assessment consultation. Uh, Up front first thing with anybody that's going through something like that. And actually, this would be even for the case of someone that has a living trust, and the trust is just going to liquidate or settle the estate of the people who died. I sit down. It's a three-part um, consultation. The first part is the legal. Where are you in a legal proceeding? Because I mean, even with a trust, it's a legal document. So, what's going on with that? If it's a probate, where are you? Because most of the time I meet my clients, unless it's been referred. Well, if it's referred by attorney, they already have an attorney.
Yeah.
It's very infrequent where I meet them first and they don't have an attorney, but I have a great network of
Mhm.
probate and estate planning attorneys that I can refer them. But so I just kind of find out where they are in the legal part of it.
Mhm.
Then the second part, which is probably the most important, is we sit down and tell me about your situation.
Mhm.
Where are you right now? What's your plan? What's your goals ultimately? And what issues or problems are you facing right now that could use some immediate help with?
Yeah.
And from that, then we set up a game plan,
Mhm.
how to get them from A to Z.
Yeah.
And then the third part of it is the real estate, which for me is like the easy part.
Mhm.
So and what's going to happen with that? Are you going to keep it, rent it out, uh, sell it, what have you? And most of the folks that I deal with end up selling it. But like you said, legal process. Where are you in that? Okay, now we know what our time frames may be. But like I said, the probably the biggest thing is just finding out their personal situation
Mhm.
and what they're looking to accomplish and what's the best way we can do that. And that's where I have a lot of experience because I've been through this with a number of families.
Mhm.
And okay, let's set our game plan. This is how we'll do it. And if it's with the probate, we'll have to do with all that in line with, what timelines and stuff for the probate, mandates. But
It's got to be a little bit delicate because when you're dealing with heirs, right? They're dealing with a loss, and they have this they have this sort of mandate, right? They're the head of the estate, right? So they're the administrator, right? Executor, whatever it is. And they want to do what the deceased wanted them to do. Because typically it's a family member, right? A parent or, that type of thing.
generally, yeah,
Sibling, right? And they
right.
want to do what they think their deceased family member would want them to do. And so there's a pressure on them and a stress on them, besides the fact that they're mourning the loss, right? They're also in a place emotionally where they're trying to do right by whoever it was that left these assets to them. Talk about that for a second, because that's the real estate thing is easy for us, right? That's right. This
Yeah,
part is a little more, it takes a little more delicacy, right? I mean, it's
yeah. Well, the one thing that I kind of go in with is, once someone has filed a petition for probate to get that going, um, to me that signals that they're ready to go about the business of closing out this estate.
Right.
So sure, there'll still be mourning. I mean, because for instance, with this last client, this one's fresh on mind. I mean, her dad passed away end of April of one year, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks later where she got the process going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure she still wasn't over mourning her dad's death, but the business of getting this estate wrapped up, she has to get started.
Yeah.
So, the one thing to find out is, get a part of this, my estate assessment consultation is when I talk about the family and the situation, okay, who are the family members? Does everyone get along? And that kind of dictates what may or may not happen.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's why, like I said, that middle part of my consultation, I think is the most crucial.
Yeah.
Because it really sets the tone for if you're going to have like as much as you can, a smooth transaction, or not.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So talk about divorce for a second. Do you handle a lot of divorce cases?
I'm not as many as I would like to. That's probably more so with the probates and trusts, those type of estates. But yeah, I've handled my share, and like I said, I'm kind of working more on some active marketing to help those folks because it's the same thing except a little different. Um, in that, in this case, as you would know, the the parties who are in conflict with each other, both of them together would be our clients, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably a little more delicate than like probates or trust estates to be settled. Um, and that's where you need some real specialized training, as far as people skills, besides just understanding with the with the divorce part of it, and really, the thing that's different, I would say, that in dealing with the divorce folks, uh, versus like a probate or what have you, is really, even I could help somebody in many ways if there was no real estate in the estate. Um, but in the divorce thing, if there's no real estate, then that's something that we're not going to be involved with, because that's just one spoke in the wheel of going through a divorce. So when
I
you're
agree with that.
yeah, so I mean, if you're in there in a divorce, it's strictly about the real estate and how to protect and help.
Yeah, it's also a delicate balance too, because you've got two sides that are not seeing eye to eye. Obviously, that's why they're getting a divorce, right? And this is the single biggest asset that they have. And so your job is to get this done for them, but try to balance both interests, right?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, you have to remain neutral.
yeah, it's a balancing act, man. It's really, yeah, to say it's delicate is an understatement.
Yeah.
So the others, so do you work with bankruptcies at all?
I have a little bit, but when needed, I have a network of a few bankruptcy attorneys.
Yeah.
So if something needs to be liquidated, that's probably a little more straightforward if
It
that's going
is.
to needs to be
It's
happening.
still emotional though. I mean, it's still one of
Oh
those
yeah.
things, right, where they're, like, and one of the things that happens is people will file for bankruptcy and attorneys will tell them, and this is not a slam against attorneys. They say this. Attorneys will tell them, "Oh, there's a possibility that you won't have to sell your house." Then they get to bankruptcy court and the bankruptcy court orders them to sell their house and they feel a little chided, to be honest, right? And
Mhm.
so, that becomes another delicacy, right? That becomes another thing where you're sort of having to strike that balance. And, one of the things that working with bankruptcies, I found anyway, one of the things that is incredibly important is making sure that they know that there's hope, that there's something past this, right? Selling their
Mm-hmm.
house is not the end of the deal, right? It's just kind of the beginning of a new chapter. So,
Right.
I can imagine with your legal background, that helps quite a bit when you're dealing with these different types of legal issues with real estate. So
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
cool. Pretty cool. Is there anything you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
Um, you know, like I guess just to go back to it, I I'm in this, and this has been my thing from the beginning, um, to help people. Um, I I I just like people who have problems. I just like, okay, let's get these resolved for you as best we can.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's where I get my real satisfaction
Yeah.
out of is, helping folks get where they are to where they want to be.
So how can somebody get a hold of you if they're looking to buy or sell, have a probate, have a divorce, have a bankruptcy, that kind of thing? How can they get a hold of you?
Okay. Well, keep in mind, I do all regular transactions as well,
Yeah.
just to put it out there.
Right.
But they can call me. My number is area code 760-822-5100, or shoot me an email. It's Frank Macri, MACRI, JD @gmail.com.
Perfect. Do you have a website they can visit?
Um, that's in progress right now.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So
And
probably phone or email.
yeah, phone, text, email. That's the most direct way. And yeah, I'm, I'm working with a company. This new website's it's going to be very informational based.
Oh,
So
cool.
people can go there to get a lot of great information, and just do their own research. And so just another helpful bit.
That's awesome, bud. Well, Frank Macri, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for being here, bud.
Thanks, Mike. Greatly appreciate it.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.